to you. Hello. This ramble today is an expression of sympathy and hope for those of us who might identify as nearly believers. If my reading is right, this is the flavour of faith of nearly all people in my parishes. It goes like this. You would believe if you could. You admire those who have faith but can't quite make that leap yourself. You might want Christianity to be true, but you struggle with exclusivist ideas or the dogmatism of religion. You'd like to go to church, or you'd like to like church, and somehow know it's important, but can only just manage to come when it's a big gig, but boredom or confusion or just dragging difficult feelings mean that you keep your attendance to a strict minimum. So you kind of believe. So this chat is to consider the reasons you might feel that and offer some pointers that I've found helpful. There is a genius proverb which says, "The fish is the last to learn it is swimming in water." It's a proverb quoted by social scientists when they unpick our difficulty in seeing our own world and how we perceive reality. So let me offer some thoughts on how the colours of our culture have bled into the ways we look at life, truth and faith. Because it's this coloration that leaves us swimming in the ambivalent feelings I've just described. For example, last century the deep cultures and European empires clashed in World War I, and that killed and displaced millions of people. Now, this eroded our trust in empire, national identity, the rightness of British culture, and with it one of the key planks of our tradition, Christianity. It was also an event that allowed and enabled humanism to grow with the enfranchising of women and the growth of feminism, movements that British culture and, in truth, faith would have suppressed otherwise. At a similar time, fascism and communism erupted from atheism and slaughtered millions, and something broke in our trust of dogma, that thing that tells us to kill or die in the name of truth. Not long before, fundamentals of faith in a creator eroded before Darwin's Origin of Species, and geologists looked at rocks and discovered that radioactive decay is better at telling the age of our planet than genealogies from Genesis. And something broke in our trust of the Bible. I could go on. There's the effect of the Enlightenment on how we believe. There's Christianity's own unpicking of its own belief. There's immoral preachers and duty-bound church-going. There's atheist apologists who seem to make more sense than a vicar, and the list goes on. Nevertheless, my sense is that although this brew means that most have lost the rudder and direction that was part of who we are, we haven't lost this sense that there is a rudder and that there is a direction that could take us beyond the ideas of getting a career, going on nice holidays, having a nice house, and making sure our children get the same. We may not have the rudder, we may not have the direction, but we still feel that the rudder and the direction, the purpose, the reason for living, belonging, fulfillment, if you like, that they're still there waiting to steer and inspire us, and actually we still long for them. So my sympathies go to you. How could you feel any other way? So to help you in these next ideas, there are some metaphors that I find useful. The first is the experience of amputees, who feel a kind of ghost itch in their missing leg. The second is the idea that shadows tell us that there's a sun. And finally, the third is the idea of the missing jigsaw piece. You know what goes there, but you haven't seen it yet. And the first hopeful thought I want to offer is the idea that people of faith point out, which is that our longing, our sense of absence, is the evidence that there is a corresponding presence. The sun is there behind the shadow. The gap in the jigsaw tells us a piece is missing. The itch reminds us of our missing leg. I'd also like to encourage you that doubt isn't always a bad thing when combined with faith. You see, doubt draws us away from bad ways of believing or knowing, and if listened to carefully, can enable good ways of believing and knowing. It's the idea that being in the shadow helps us see the sun when we peep around the edge of our obstruction. So what might be the obstructions? Well, let's look back at the shadows we live within. What obstructions to the light might we carry in our hearts? Well, here's a list. You can bring your own, and hopefully I've got some hints to help you look beyond them. The first is dogmatism. I've already referred to it. The idea that there is one way of believing, and you and I are required to believe in exactly the way we are told. As I read Jesus, he was really heavy on the clerics and their dogmas, the ones in the fancy collars and the robes, who had offices full of books and loved speaking from ornate pulpits. He seemed to prefer actions and intriguing stories over and above lists of rules. So instead of dogma, we hear evocative, ambiguous and appealing phrases such as, God is light, in him there is no darkness, and Jesus saying, I am the light and the truth. So just maybe your longing and your doubt is the call of God, maybe, asking you to look past the shadows of dogma into a relationship of light. But what about scientific truth, the idea that stuff is only true if it can be proven, that evidence is king, and that therefore this itch for our missing leg may be merely a childish longing for the Santa Claus God, or that the light behind the obstruction is not God, but in fact the cold light of science and reason? Well, with all due respect to those scientists, maybe it really is the case that if you feel your leg is missing, then there really is a leg to be missed, that having a God-shaped jigsaw piece whole means that there is a God that fits just right. And to risk entering into the scientist's domain, I'm quite content to accept that there was a big bang out of nothing, but I am less willing to believe that there was no one outside of space and time who actually lit that fuse for that big bang to happen. Sometimes, I'm afraid, a God of the gaps is the right answer. The gap is God, and that's exactly why you long for that God who is the purpose behind the making and shaping of the universe. And finally, let's not forget that yes, the church does carry baggage. I know this. Baggage of British Empire, baggage of corrupt priests, baggage of Christians with their attitudes and their ways. But I would encourage you to remain hopeful about church. Be hopeful that actually, yes, there is a baby in the bathwater. There is a baby that grew and was grumpy at the religious types and who gave his own self so that you could look past the shadows, back out into the light and love of God. So my encouragement to you is to keep looking, seek, and you will find. The light is out there, and the shadows don't have to define your life. May God bless you.